Anything that becomes weaponized becomes ugly.
Okay,
right?
I agree.
That is included the deen as well. When the deen is weaponized, it becomes ugly. Now, mental health has been weaponized. It has been weaponized to promote certain socio-political views, and it has been weaponized in the household as well, and sometimes sisters and brothers, but sisters in this context are to blame for it, right? Where they say, why don't you just get therapy? Because the intention of seeking therapy there isn't to help. You know, I have couples in the room who will come to the room, and their idea is to really use therapy as a stick to beat the other person with. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So
They
when
have an
something
agenda.
becomes weaponized, it becomes ugly. And the mental health field has been weaponized to produce, promote many views out there that are contrary to, our faith, our culture, traditional values that we've grown up with, that we've seen. And that's why a lot of men have this wall and, reservation against it. But it doesn't mean you throw the baby with the bath water, right? There's good in it. Think about it like this. Look, if you look at the recent mental health statistics, right, 33% roughly of those who seek help in the NHS are men, right? 33%. The rest of it are women. So men seek help 50% less than women do.
Okay, interesting.
Right? At the same time, men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. Die by suicide. If there's one metric of an unsatisfactory life, it's death. It's suicide.
100%.
Why am I taking my own life?
Yeah.
Right? And the amount of... So what am I saying is that men would rather die than talk about how they feel and seek the help that is needed. And that's not healthy. That's not a healthy antidote, right? Your example of giving the examples of the deen that you gave of Jannah and Jahannam are absolutely beautiful. And I think as Muslims, our religion gives us, as I said, we are meaning-seeking people. Human beings are meaning-seeking people. Our religion gives us a narrative through which we can understand the tests of life that we are faced with, 100%, right? But even with them, there are examples of people who are better placed than us, who went through these tests and felt these emotions and felt the need to express them, right? Now, with a therapist, it's a little bit different. What happens with a therapist? Like I said, look, not everybody needs to go to therapy. In fact, most men, no, I'm not going to say most men, but a lot of men don't necessarily need to. Some men don't need to talk about what's going on for them, right?
Sure.
Do you know what they need? They just need companionship. Because the other issue, right, the main issue that I think is a silent epidemic out there is loneliness amongst men, right?
But isn't that just find yourself a wife? No?
So you can be lonely in a crowd of people,
Okay.
right? Because human beings have a deep need for connection. And we're not talking about superficial conversations of who's on top of the Premier League or what card you like or what this episode of XYZ. We're talking about connection, right? How connected do you feel? How close do you feel to a brother when he tells you about something that's going on in his life? How close do you feel to him? Much more. Am I wrong?
Of course.
Am I putting words in your mouth?
Yeah, of course.
Because that's what I'm paid to do, innit? Just put words in people's mouth.
No. Forgive me, Akhi. I'm not saying it like that.
I'm joking with you. Allah, I'm joking. I know you're not. But you have valid questions. You represent a viewpoint that exists out there. And I'm hoping, if anything, I know I might be sounding a bit passionate about it right now, right? I can, by a percent, maybe help you see it in a slightly different way, right? From your worldview, from a religious man's point of view, right? There's so many different examples.
The fact that you said, subhanAllah, to begin with, that not all people need therapy, that gives me a branch of sincerity from where you're coming from. Because certain people, and Mu'azz's point about ruqya, I have seen Rakis that somehow say everyone's got a jinn with them that goes to see him and then gets their sessions of £70 an hour going for 10, 15 sessions that goes on. And at the end of it, you can see that the guy is just capitalizing on this idea, right, from that. But from you, from the outset, saying that, it's only for certain people, not for those people, shows me an aspect of sincerity on that. So forgive me if I suggested anything.
You didn't suggest anything.
Yeah.
These are conversations we should be having.
Yeah.
Right. Again, when things become weaponized, when things become, kind of lopsided, there's always going to be a reaction on the other side. You're thinking, okay, Is this abuse rather than actually healing people?
Yeah, yeah.
Are
Of
people
course.
just making money on the backs of people? And I can't sit and tell you some therapists don't do that, right? I don't know if anybody does
Maybe
that. I like to think I don't do that, right? But that's why I think you should, yeah. I mean, I get. Where you're coming
Okay,
from.
so who in your opinion qualifies for therapy? Actually, who doesn't qualify for therapy?
If you're a fully, okay, it's gonna seem like I'm going back on what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? But let me put it to you this way: I think therapy will help every single human being to self-reflect.
So everyone needs therapy.
No, not everyone needs therapy.
But
But if you
everyone-
want to up level, therapy has always been a luxury. Historically, therapy has always been for the upper classes. If you can afford it, you get therapy. All of my clients that are with me right now, they will be fully functional adults, even if they don't come and see me tomorrow. Right?
So you're saying
they'll be fully
therapy-
functional adults. But I'm saying to you that I'm saying therapy can help everybody self-reflect and know themselves about. Khattab said, hold yourself accountable before you are held accountable.
Yes. Yeah.
Therapy provides you a space where you will understand yourself, your emotions, your intentions, your motivations on a far deeper level than you'll be able to anywhere else.
So therapy would improve everyone.
Therapy can help improve everybody. I do believe that. Now, does everybody need it? No, everybody doesn't need it.
Just break
One
down
second.
therapy for
Will
me.
everyone improve
It
through therapy?
Inshallah, yeah.
Where I'm going is, let's say you've brought up childhood trauma, and in therapy, very likely childhood memories are going to come up.
Depending on the type of therapist you go to, the modality that they practice in.
But
So these things really
generally speaking, they're going to ask you about your childhood.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes there could be traumas in your childhood that you have completely just hidden from your own memory bank. And it reawakens in trauma. And the trauma reawakens, the memory of the trauma reawakens in therapy. Now, the therapist has now ignited this childhood trauma that the person has put out. They've put out that fire and somehow it's ignited again. And now the client, in the words of the Joker, loses their mind. Yeah? And the therapist doesn't know what to do.
So
Can it be that the therapist can reignite this childhood trauma and then not know what to do with it?
do you have therapists that are working in things that they're not trained to do fully? Yes, that can happen, right? But just to
Because
kind
it's not a
of
fully regulated industry, is it? So you
Therapy-
can get some
There's a lot of people out there.
psychotherapists that have done, I don't know, a level 2 or level 3 course, and then they're dealing with heavy matters now with certain clients.
I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous for the counsellor and also for the client as well. Because therapy within the UK isn't regulated. If that's something you guys want me to go into, then I can. But for the
No, that's boring.
But to
I'm joking.
but to go into the but as a side note, no, I do personally believe that you should go to a therapist who is accredited with a known registered body. And if you, but specifically actually to actually zero in on that even more, I do think Muslims should go see a Muslim therapist, but not necessarily just a Muslim therapist, because there's a lot now. I think you should go to somebody who aligns with Islamic values as well in their therapy, right? There are also Islamic models out there. Again, I'm not an expert in this particular area. I use a lot of Islamic techniques and concepts within my work, but that's a separate conversation. There's a whole lot of things out the drama.
Essentially, in short,
you know,
my question was,
your question,
can it go
no,
wrong?
No, but the example that you
Yeah,
gave,
yeah.
the example that you gave, right? Somebody has trauma, and they have buried
Buried it.
not buried. He said squashed. That
Squashed.
fire. They have squashed that.
It's
fire.
12 feet under.
It's 12
He
feet
hasn't
under.
thought
Don't
about it
bring
in
it back up.
years.
So why is he in the therapy room?
Oh, no, for something else.
For what?
For example, couples therapy.
And what's happening there in
No,
the
no.
relationship?
There's problems with the guy and his wife, right?
Yeah, but
And then
so
then the therapist says, I think it's time that we do individual therapy with you.
So-
And then he delves into individual therapy with each of them, and then asks a very generic
Does this
question.
ever happen, or is it just a hypothetical situation that would never happen?
so
Is
again,
this
there are
too
different
too
ways-
far fetched? What I'm saying?
It is a little bit, but it's not at the same time, again, because it's not the way that I work. Right.
Yeah.
So if I was to work with a couple, I'd have the couple in the beginning. We'd have a joint session to begin with.
Yeah.
to establish where they are, what's working, what isn't working, where do they want to be. And then I'd have an individual session each on the telephone, right? Just to understand their histories better, because often our history can cast a shadow on the present moment, right? And then from then on, I would only work with them as a couple, and I would not provide them, any one of them, with individual therapy until the couple's therapy is finished, right? In that case, I might work with the brother if needed. I haven't in most cases. If needed, right? I don't work with sisters on an individual basis, right? With the exception of religious OCD. That's a very specialist area. But I don't. So I don't. I wouldn't do that. And as far as I know, most therapists shouldn't do that. You can't give individual therapy and work with a couple at the same time, because it would.
Oh no! The example I gave was now this is over. I want to work with you individually. That was
Yeah. So that's. I mean, let's say no, that can happen. If it's specifically what you just said, that can happen. There's room for that.
The question is for me more relating to that. Do you bring about traumas from the past, right, which are already buried and you've forgotten about? Because bringing it up would cause more pain. So you've already, in some ways, healed from that. How are you healing from it? By
I would say the assumption you're making, and the assumption that Muaz has made us also, is that this pain has gone, right? I can't bring about your pain if it is gone. If you had an argument with your wife and you're completely over it, I can say very little, if you're actually over it, to re-trigger that argument again for you. Do you know what I mean? I can push certain buttons and do waswas. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But I can do very little with that. My point is this: I don't think that it's been buried. It hasn't been healed, right? And the manifestations of that will show in your relationship or in your life right now. So we're looking at this childhood trauma. Let's say of people in either of these sides. Let's go back to anger, right? So this person here has experienced something that he has buried. He has buried his, he was, it can be something even that isn't super intense, let's say, right? Social anxiety, right? He felt a level of humiliation growing up as a child when he cried. He was made to feel like it was a very unmanly, terrible thing to do, right? So as a result, what did he do? He learned to bury his emotion. That becomes a coping mechanism for that individual. Right? I learned to deny. I use denial as a coping mechanism. I use displacement as a coping mechanism. I do these kind of things. And I'm unconscious of this. I don't know that I'm doing it. So then what happens is now, some way, I'm still using this in my adult relationship. So in an adult relationship, I'm in a situation now, I'm arguing with my wife, or there's something happening, and I've just shut my emotions down. Now this person here isn't having a conversation with somebody else. They're having a conversation with the wall.
Right.
So what happens to this individual? That coping mechanism that they did, it's not working for them anymore. This is a different context, a different scenario. So this might come up from their childhood, from their history, and present itself within the relationship at present, and that needs to be worked on. And yeah, they will realize certain things that may have happened, right? But I didn't create that trauma, and that person hasn't gotten over it. They've just pretended like it hasn't existed. They've just buried it under the rug, and eventually you will flip over the rug yourself. And if you found yourself in the therapy room, you flipped over the rug. You've slipped over it. It's been too much. You can't bury anymore. You can't take anymore.
Just one thing I was going to add on to it, but I don't know too much about the subject. Adler said that you need to sometimes, to heal, you progress and use positivity and have this positive mindset. You don't need to look at the past. It's something you just leave behind. But the other guy, Freud, he always says, bring back the past, try and heal those things. Is it similar to that? What I'm saying...
People are different.
Yeah.
People are different. Human beings have different temperaments.
Yeah.
The way Umar wasn't the way Abu Bakr was.
Yeah, they're different.
The way Ali wasn't the way Uthman was. They were different.
But that goes back to, go on.
And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would deal with people differently, right? So, you're asking for a one rule, one size fits all kind of approach.
Okay, fine.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
But is there space in your world, if you accept this answer, is there space in your world that some people do need to heal things that have happened in the past? Is there space for that? If you can accept that human beings are different, is there space to accept that some people just need to explore certain things and process it, right? And the intention of it isn't to now break off ties with people, isn't to break families.
Yeah,
that's
but
not
that's not something that's allowed in our deen, even.
Exactly.
Breaking kinship.
would
is
hate
a
to
major
be,
sin.
I would hate to be the cause of that, right? But the idea of it is this: look, if there's a thought that you have, a memory that you have, some event that has happened to you in the past, and you just can't talk about it, then that's a very big sign that you haven't gotten over it. What would processing look like now is a smart question, right? What does that mean? What that means now is you're able to actually think about it. You're able to actually talk about it. You're able to actually understand the impact it had on you, right? And then and you're able to feel the things that come with it without it overwhelming you anymore. So it's not something that you're burying. Men need to live in reality. That's a sign of manliness, to live in reality, not absence of reality. And our reality includes some of the experiences that we've had.
Yep.
All right. Next question is, this is a big one again, but what is the most thing that you see young men are silently struggling with?
So the biggest problem that I find the biggest issue that I find within my room that I've seen, and I work predominantly with anxiety related issues, right? And I think addiction can also fall under that because anxiety can lead to addiction, right? In particular, porn addiction is an area that I work with, is loneliness. Loneliness is an epidemic.
Is that because of porn addiction?
Well, there is an argument to say that addiction isolates the individual and therefore they increase in their loneliness because of it. Because addiction takes over your whole brain pathway. When you don't want to see people anymore because you want to go fulfill the cravings that you have.
This isn't just for men, by the way, is it? It's women as well.
No, addiction is it just the manifestations may be a little bit more different. Shopping can be an addiction. Online shopping can become an addiction. Food can be an addiction, right? But if we go
on the
back,
topic of young men,
but no, if we to answer your question specifically, right? I think loneliness is the biggest issue that I think often gets overlooked in society, and that's really strange, seeing as we are more connected now in terms of technology than we have ever been able to be. But yet loneliness is such a big issue. 15% of men have said that they don't have a single close friend in 2021, right?
Oh, wow.
15%. That's, by the way, up by 5 times from the 1990s. That's increased by 5. From 3%, it's gone to 15.
Wow.
Right?
Even with 3,000 Facebook and Instagram friends, yeah?
Even I don't have that, but you know. But
That's
even with that, some people have said that. But let me build on that, right? 1 in 4 men, 25% of men, right? 25% of men have reported feeling loneliness chronically, a lot, always. That's 1 in 4 men. That's one of us in this room that has experienced a lot of loneliness in their life and has never spoken about it.
Right? Can you break down what loneliness is? Is it just not having contact with other people, or is there more to it?
That's isolation, bro.
Loneliness is a feeling. It's a feeling, I would say, of not feeling connected, understood, heard, seen by those around you, not feeling valued. And all of these would come together to describe the experience of what loneliness is.
So you could be...
But I'd also put that back on yourselves, right? As men, as human beings, are there not times in your life where you felt lonely?
Yeah, of course there'll be times, naturally. What,
No.
none? Come on. There's always going to be a time.
You've never felt lonely? Never? See, I've been watching your podcast, right? You left Egypt by yourself.
He's got receipts.
No.
Right?
Let's go into it.
You left Egypt
Let's get
by
into it.
yourself.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do.
Yeah, but
What was
bro,
that like?
I didn't feel lonely, bro.
Like Ibrahim.
I actually didn't feel lonely. I enjoyed that process. Looking back at it, I've enjoyed that process.
Looking in hindsight.
But at the point, there was a period of time where I didn't have friends, yes, for about 2 years. But those 2 years, I was actually focused on myself. I was building myself.
What did that feel like?
It was challenging in terms of achievements, but I didn't feel lonely.
We're in a live therapy.
No, seriously. I actually didn't feel lonely.
MashaAllah.
Like, there was so many things within mental health that when I look at it, well, I'll be honest, I'm like, why is a person challenging with, certain aspects, whether it's fear, whether it's what they call loneliness, whether it's challenges in general. I'm like, why is a man dealing with those issues, right? And the way I look at it is, if you do not face those issues, or if you do not go out of your way to actually go make friends, then you are definitely going to feel lonely. So even when I was getting to know Mu'az, Saif, and all the brothers around the university, I've met them at the Islamic fair or the freshers fair.
Freshers fair.
Yeah.
You met us at the ISOC stand.
And Isaac, yeah.
No, you
That's
met
why I
me in
met
the
them.
prayer room, bro.
I mentioned the
And
prayer.
asked for my course.
But that's the thing, which is,
He
you know,
didn't give it.
it was an advice that was given to me by my father, which is,
Mm.
if you want to meet friends, go find them in the masjid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the first thing that I've done was, when I came to the university, was look at the brothers that are in the masjid, right? But throughout the whole process, bro, I'll be honest, I do not feel lonely. I didn't feel lonely. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you did when you didn't,
Yeah.
right? But what I would say to you
Yeah.
is that you had a motivation to seek friends.
Yes.
Why? If you didn't have
To
an
build
aspect of
brotherhood.
loneliness, for what reason? Why
To
not
build
just focus
brotherhood.
on your goals? Why not just achieve? Why not just do these things?
But that's an essential
If-
element for you to be able to cope in
And what
general.
motivates that essential element? And you might not be able to label it as that. And again, I'm not going to apply it to you, but
That's
in
fine.
general,
That's fine.
is the concept. Like, again, I have a motivation
Yeah.
in myself. That loneliness will motivate me to seek companionship. I don't mean it's a loneliness where I'm now going to feel bad for myself and so on and so forth. This is just momentary loneliness.
Yeah.
The deep problem that I'm saying with men
Mm.
that exists is chronic loneliness.
Okay.
I don't have friends.
Mm.
I don't have things to do.
Mm.
You know, I don't feel connected. I don't feel seen. I don't feel understood. I don't feel heard. Where do I, and if I don't have these things, then how do I really exist in that sense? That kind of feeling within the individual is kind of more what I'm referring to. But when you mention Ibrahim alayhi salam as well, even if we stay on that, when he took Ismail and Hajar to Mecca, he made a dua. What was his dua?
Established salah on them, I think it was one part of the dua.
Yeah, that was the first part of the dua. Allow them to turn to you,
And that's another thing.
And
as well.
bring people to them.
Mm.
Because human beings need other human beings.
Yes.
100%.
We need, the Jama'ah is mentioned so much. The idea of having a group, being sticking to the Jama'ah.
Yeah, this deen is a
What does that-
communal deen.
It's a communal deen, our acts of worship, so on and so. These are communal things because loneliness is debilitating, right? And that is a real problem within a lot of Muslim families. And the reason why I say this again, why I highlight this, is when we go back to suicide. Look, men find it very difficult to seek help, right? As we said, they seek help half than women do, 50% less, but yet they are open to, they die by suicide 3 times more than women do. And 2 things need to happen simultaneously for a person to take their own life, to get to that point. One is that they need to be in a state of pain for a long period of time that allows them to override the natural instinct to survive, because it is a humongous amount of brutal force is needed to take one's own life. So they need to be in some amount of pain for a long period of time that numbs their tolerance anymore. They don't feel it, right? And the second thing is, for people who have suicidal ideation, who go down that route, is that you then have to also, they have this misconception in their mind that their life is a burden for those around them, right? Others will be better off if I die than I live.
But that's
So
yeah.
these 2 things, right? So if we look at the first one, when men have issues with depression, and the manifestation of depression within a man and a woman is different, right? Men tend to deal with these emotions through 3 mechanisms: either escapism, right, through some form of addiction, or work, or friends, even whatever, people, gatherings, whatever it might be. Escapism, withdrawal, social withdrawal. So that will look like, your friend, your husband, he's not in the, he's isolating himself more in the room, or your child is isolating themselves a bit more. They're not going to the gatherings anymore. So social withdrawal, right? And the final one is impulse control, right? So aggressive behaviors, so irritability, increasing aggressive behavior, antisocial behavior, these types of things. So when men do eventually go and seek help, that's not because they're not less, listen when they get to that point, because the consequences are 3 times more likely.
When it comes to what's it called, Islamic therapy, for example, right? Especially with men in general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, right? So whoever goes away from, remembering me, then he will live a life that is very unfulfilling in general, right? Is that an approach that you take when you're advising your clients?
My approach in therapy is generally to not advise my clients, depending on the type of work I'm doing. Alhamdulillah, I've trained in a few different modalities.
Yeah.
So depending on what the client presents with, I'll take a different route.
Good.
Right? My general advice is not to advise my clients, because I believe in the approach that if I can create an environment where you feel more comfortable to figure things out yourself, then you don't need me after a while.
So
rather than you coming back to me all the time for something.
A brother,
you know how they say, teach a man to fish, he'll fish forever. Give him a fish, he'll eat for a day. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So a lonely brother comes to you, and you're in a session now. What do you tell him? How does he figure himself out, and how can he actually come out of this cycle of loneliness? I mean, it's something that actually he needs to go out there and get friends or have children or something. I don't know.
Well, for us, it will be an idea of actually trying to explore what's underneath the loneliness. How did it become like this? Because it doesn't just start like this. And often what I find is this extreme fear of feeling embarrassed, of rejection. And that comes from things that have been buried. Right? This felt so bad for me as a child. I could, this experience of rejection, that I've just stayed away from any element, any scenario that I could be rejected again. So I've become lonely. Right? So we process that. But at the same time, we have to think, okay, so then what can you do? Like what resources are available for you? And this is where it's heartbreaking, because there isn't so many, right? So if there's a solution, if one thing that we can work on as a norm to try to help Muslim men improve their mental health spaces, right, is we have to start creating more intimate gatherings for men to actually now not necessarily listen to a talk or a lecture together, because when we're doing this, we're all sitting there, we listen to a lecture and we go by. How often do we speak to the person in front and behind us and so on and so forth next to us? How many people do we connect with? Not so much. The reminder, I'm not knocking it. There's space for it.
But don't we have that intimate connection between Muslim brotherhood in Jama'ah, in the masjid, when you're going for Fajr, Isha?
I don't think so. I think in
praying together,
Ramadan,
feet to feet.
How many people do you know the names of everybody in your Jama'ah?
Oh, you know their faces. We speak to them.
I think in Ramadan you get that.
Yeah.
Ramadan you get that. The I'tikaf gang, the front row gang. You know what I mean? It's very intimate in Ramadan. In fact, when it's over, everyone's actually Eid has come, time to celebrate.
Most of these guys, I don't see them as people who suffer from loneliness as the way you're describing.
No, but what I'm saying is, he's saying we need more of that.
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. I've had people who work in Dawah, people who are Hufad. I've had people who lead Taraweeh in my room, presenting issues of loneliness.
So they can still feel lonely with people around them.
Yeah. Because you're not being you're being a version of you that you feel like you have to be. You're people pleasing.
A lot of people pleasing.
You're self-sacrificing extremely, so on and so forth. There's no space for you. There's no space for your needs. And if that's on a constant basis, then you're going to feel lonely. Because when does someone take care of me? It's reciprocal. You know how you said
you're a man. No one's supposed to take care of you.
The example that I gave, unfortunately, that's also a reality that we might have to accept in some aspects of it, right? Because that's a part anyway. The example that I gave of how close do you feel to a brother when he confides in you, right? Well, similarly, he also feels closer to you when you confide in him. So those things are reciprocal, right? We need to be there for people, and it's healthy, and we need to allow people to be there for us, because that's healthy as well.
Okay, I think we're running out of time. It's been a very fruitful episode. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for coming. As a kind gesture for our guest, we, as usual, give a AAA Talks hoodie.
MashaAllah.
Damn, that logo's good.
MashaAllah.
So did you pass this down?
I think I need a big
shout out. Shout out to Tawfiq Therapy. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah.
This definitely won't be the last time you come. Inshallah, more times to come.
Inshallah.
And I hope you've had a good time.
It's definitely therapeutic.
Has it been therapeutic?
100%.
Okay.
You had a live 5-minute session, by the way.
Invoices
I enjoyed it.
For those of you who've come this far in the episode, comment below. Therapy.
Therapy?
Just therapy? That's no
loneliness.
Man needs therapy.
Man needs therapy. Yeah.
No,
nice.
Don't put it to man.
No, I like that.
Man needs therapy.
It's got a nice little ring to it, man.
Let's see what people think.
Yeah, man needs therapy. Comment that below.
Yeah.
But as usual, guys, follow Brother Ahmed Tawfiq Therapy on the socials. We're gonna put that in the description below. And as usual, like, share, comment with your views. Do you agree with Saif's harsh stance on men don't need therapy, or do you agree with Brother Ahmed? And anything else?
Firing line as well. Don't subscribe, guys. I don't want any of you to subscribe. But seriously, bro. That's it.
It's just too extreme.
So if you don't agree with him, don't subscribe. For those who do subscribe, click the notification bell. We've been AAA Talk, signing out. Your brother Muaz.
Yeah.
Saif al-Haq.
Ahmed.
MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum.
Next.